All right, I'm calling this meeting back to order. Mr. Shell.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm here as a liaison to Head Start to talk about 4 items that we have on our agenda. But just as a reminder to the audience that hears this in the room, as well as sees it on TV, Head Start is a federally funded program that New Hanover County took over, was requested to, and took over 4 years ago, entering in our 5th year, and has done an extraordinary job. But it is a federally funded program, and this board serves as the board. It sets policy and makes decisions, so you have a fiduciary, we have a fiduciary responsibility to that. First item that we have here is what you receive each month, which is the liaison report, which is enrollment data. That hasn't changed an awful lot, but down at the bottom of that one page are updates. And I think it's important, there's a number of things here, but I think what's really important is the focus on implementation that Head Start and preschool has had using the principle of conscious discipline. And you're in for a treat tonight on that. But I don't know that there's anything further to talk, but you've got that before you, and that's available to the public, so I won't go any further with that. Second item is a monthly expenditure report, and along the lines of what we just talked about, the budget, which is federally funded and supported through indirect efforts with the school system, is a $1.977 million budget. It serves 260 children in extraordinary ways, which we've talked about before. But this report, if you figure we are 8 months through the year, or 2/3 through the year, 67%, we're right on track in our spending when you look at the line items that make up this total budget and what we are spending. Unless there are any questions, I think it's self-explanatory, and I'll move on.
Health support services looks to be front-loaded. We've spent 93%. I mean, is that the routine eye exams, ear, hearing?
The expert's going to have to answer that. Go ahead.
The health services, is that front-loaded?
Okay, so that's referencing to our dental exams that we pay for that aren't covered by Medicaid, in addition to any support systems that we give, and that most likely is the beginning of the year. However, at the end of the year, we do have a little kickoff with Field Day.
Okay, and that's covered as part of it?
Pardon me?
Health services covers part of that Field Day?
Yes.
Oh,
correct,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So, good question, thank you. So it's a timing issue, but as you can see, it's monitored actual against budget. Third item on your agenda is the pre-K registration information. Just very briefly, I'll ask Ms. Smiles to present that so everyone can understand.
So we have the flyer that we've been sending out at all of our key places that are instrumental in helping us get our upcoming preschool students registered for 18-19. So we just wanted to share with the community that we've started that kickoff so we can submit applications to our pre-K centers, Howe, Johnson, and then of course our Early Childhood Education Department office, which is located at the Spencer Building, and we've added Career Readiness Academy at Mosley and they're accepting applications as well. Our community folks can pick these applications up at these offices, elementary schools, health department, social services, and one more at the administrative building off of Carolina Beach Road.
Ms. Miles, can you explain just for the board, how do you know whether to apply for Head Start or pre-K?
So, great question. So we are a one-point entry application process. So on our one application, we have all the requirements of our federal programs and our state programs, which is including our Title I as well. So once we have the application submitted to these 4 locations at these centers, it will be filtered through our office, through our online state and federal government systems in place that will prioritize the students. High risk, of course, is first placement, and then we look at the districts, and then we actually start a wait list. So yes, the systems are in place, and we go by the federal and state guidelines. Thank you for that.
So what's the likelihood? I mean, we've been 260 students since we started this. What's the likelihood of it being expanded to be able to take more students into the Head Start program? Or is there any
Today,
benefit to it taking more into the Head Start program?
well, the benefit would be to serve more students and get them into our classrooms and get them ready for school and get them healthy so that they're ready to learn. Now, I do surf the federal government OHS system often to see if they do submit or if they do advertise application for expansion. So, you know, definitely it's something that I think our community could benefit from. At this point in time, I find that very challenging to do right now with everybody in office. So,
Thank you.
Our last item is to expose you all to conscious discipline from the experts. And I'm putting on some unique glasses to do this. So as you can see, tonight, conscious discipline teachers have learned about 7 powers and 7 skills necessary for self-regulation. By implementing the powers and skills together, we learn to stay in control of ourselves as adults and in charge of children in a manner that models the same skills we seek to teach, such as resolving conflicts, preventing bullying, and developing pro-social behaviors. Conscious discipline helps teachers regulate themselves so that they can teach and coach children through their strong emotions. We had a visit to our community by a former gang member, and he talked, if any of you attended that, he talked about the impact of conscious discipline on him and how it changed his life, how he saw the world through a different lens. So when children don't know how to do math, we teach them math. When they don't know how to read, we help them read. When they need to learn to ride a bicycle, we teach them that. That's exactly what we're doing in our preschool classrooms every day with children that come in with challenges, and we teach them how to address those challenges within themselves to make them better citizens. So you can see I'm wearing my heart glasses with the lens of positive intent. This means I'm choosing to see the best in others. This is just one of the powers, skills necessary for self-regulation and problem solving. They're pretty cool, aren't they?
I think we're going to keep them.
So now I'm going to turn it over to the experts and sit down and enjoy their show. Thank you and appreciate your attention.
Don't take those glasses off.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. You're quite our superstar. We would just like to share tonight you briefly. We are showcasing what's going on in our classrooms across the county at 6 of our locations. And we have captured that with this PowerPoint briefly. But it's every class, or every site, 7 sites. And this team of mine, Stand Up Ladies, are so instrumental in the implementation of this. And we're spending the money, but we're using it.
By brick and stone by stone, we all find a way to build a wall. And all we get is more alone. Can you see the stones have got to fall? Ooh, yeah. We can let them stand, but then nobody wins. We can work together, find somewhere to begin. It starts in the heart, way down in the soul. That's the only place the seeds of love can grow. Then you realize that we're not that far apart. We can build a bridge. Starts in the heart, way down in the soul. It starts in the heart. I look at you, you look at me. Can you see that I am on your side? Oh yeah. And though we sometimes disagree, we can find a way to make it by. Though the road is long and isn't always clear, I know there's some way to get there from here. We can get there. It starts in the heart, way down in the soul. That's the only place the seeds of love can grow. Then you realize that we're not that far apart. We can build a bridge. It starts in the heart. It starts in the heart, way down in the soul. That's the only place the seeds of love can grow. Then you realize that we're not that far apart. We can build a bridge, build a bridge, build a bridge. It starts in the heart, way down in the soul. It starts in the heart, way down in the soul. It starts in the heart.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you and your staff for all you do for our children. All right, next item on our agenda is information, policy for first reading, new policy board appointments, Appendix D1, Ms. Nichols.
This is a new policy for first reading, so I'm going to ask Mr. Bullard if he will go through the points of this policy.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. By statute, the school board is responsible for appointing 4 out of the 13 members of the Board of Trustees of Cape Fear Community College. And the board has done that for many, many years without a formal policy as to the procedure that it would use to accomplish that. So I was asked to propose a draft policy that would sort of formalize the practice that the board had engaged in over the years and to clarify some of the questions that had come up regarding exactly how that is going to be done and the timeline associated with it. So I prepared a draft policy and took it to the policy committee, and they approved it for first reading. So what you have before you is the draft. It's a new policy. And what it says is that the board will advertise, or the staff would advertise at least 90 days before a trustee's term expires, and would seek applications from candidates. And those applications would be submitted in writing with a resume and a letter. Board members would then decide which of the 5 applicants they were interested in interviewing, and then the 5 would be interviewed by the board, and then the board would vote on which candidate or candidates to select to fill the expiring term. The policy has some detail in it, such as how long the interview shall take place, whether board members that don't participate in the interviews can vote, and things like that. It also requires that the advertising for the position be in an attempt to be broad in scope, and an attempt to seek a diverse set of applicants. And also it has a provision on the second page, in situations where a trustee may relinquish the position during the term, the statute says that the governor of North Carolina has the right to make the appointment to replace that trustee within 60 days if the school board doesn't do it. And so it provides for a compressed timeline to advertise for the position and interview the candidates. And there's nothing really new in this proposed policy that is substantially different than what the board has done as a practice for many years. But it would formalize the practice and keep it consistent from year to year going forward.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Bullard, the item down there at the bottom says no individual board member has, wait, that's not what I wanted, sorry. I thought there was a provision in there about voting if you didn't attend.
There is, I think it's at the bottom of the first page.
Okay.
I know it's in there somewhere.
Third bullet before the bottom. Yep. I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah, where he's talking about the tie for 5th place.
I thought there was a write-up in there that if you had not attended, you couldn't vote, and I wonder if that's something we can do. Deny a board member the right to vote because they weren't there for the whole duration. And I just ask you what your thoughts are on that.
What you mean for the interviews?
Well, I'm trying to respond to this. I think that's what it said.
It says, yeah, board members who do not attend the entire scheduled interviews in person are disqualified from voting. It's at the top of the
Right,
second
and Bruce's
page.
question is, can you actually disqualify a board member from voting if I'm
That's
hearing that,
exactly what I'm asking.
regardless of whether you're there or not? If you showed up just as you were about to vote, can you deny them the vote?
You mean if they didn't hear the presentations? Right.
I understand the intent, but I'm questioning the legality of that.
That is something that I thought about, and I think we may have discussed this in the policy committee meeting. I know I've maybe emailed some board members who asked me about that before. So the answer to your question is no, I do not think that would be enforceable. And the reason that this is put in there is to encourage the board members to attend the interviews. But I do not think the board can set parameters on when another board member can or cannot vote.
Well, then why in the world would put it in there? I have a problem with that. I mean, I understand the intent, and I think it's honorable, but why in the world would have something in the policy we can't enforce? I have challenge.
Perhaps a compromise would be to say that the board strongly encourages all board members to attend all interviews before voting, or something to that effect.
Why
Well,
would
in
it
the
not be
past,
enforceable?
if they weren't there for the whole interview, maybe they came in, maybe there'd already been 2 interviews and there was some more coming. They weren't allowed to vote because they didn't hear the interviews.
Why would it not be enforceable?
I mean, I just don't think any elected body can put restrictions on when a board member can or cannot vote. If the board member is present, the board member is entitled to vote on anything the board member,
But they could not
Chooses
vote
to
after
vote
the
on it.
fact, could they? I mean, if a vote was taken and they disagreed with it and their vote could change something, say the next day, they could not come back and vote then, could they?
You mean if they weren't there for the original vote?
You gotta be present in however form you deem present to vote for something. You can't wait a day and vote.
That's what I'm asking, I think. I mean, I don't have a problem with saying if you're not there, you shouldn't be allowed to vote, but I can understand what he's saying. By the same token, though, I would not want somebody may come in and say, well, I've read all the resumes, I understand what it is, why can't I vote after those who were there yesterday when the presentations were made have voted and said, this is our choice, then somebody else comes up, another board member comes up and says, oh, well, I didn't get to vote, I want to vote. I don't think that would be proper.
No, but I think Mr. Shell's talking about, I wasn't there for the interviews, but I was there for the vote. You can't deny a board member.
When we cast a vote, I agree, I don't think we can.
That's all I'm saying.
But this is a board policy and the board, involving the board. And if all 7 of us agree to this, why then can we not say you can't vote if you come in at the end or you're not present during the interviews? Yeah, legally they can contest it, but it's not fair. And if you're not responsible, you shouldn't be able to vote. I'm sorry.
I don't know, and I yield to what Mr. Bullard thinks, but I think that there's a lot of policies that limit what board members can and can't do. So I'm not sure why we couldn't do this as well.
I think Mr. Bullard ought to check and see if there's any statutory provisions in the state legislature about members of elected boards being able to or not vote, and if there's not, then I think Ms. Nichols may be right. This is our policy, and we ought to be able
I'll be glad to check with the School of Government or whatever experts they have up there and get their advice on this type of thing.
But even
if I find something different, I'll be glad to let the board know.
I would be concerned, even if it is allowable, that you're really creating a slippery slope here. Okay, so you're saying now you can't vote because you didn't hear these interviews. What's to stop you from extending that policy to, well, you missed most of the meeting, but you showed up just to vote for this one particular item? You're setting a precedent of restriction on board members that I would just be cautious of.
Well, maybe so, but nevertheless, we have a duty to be here when we're doing these things. And I think, as Ms. Nichols says, anything that encourages board members to be part of what their job is should be upheld. But that's just me.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. I just have a problem with it being in the policy.
Mr. Bullard, when you, and I'm sure you'll get on this first thing in the morning, when you
About 9 o'clock.
do determine if there's a need to change, can you get that out to us? Because we want this to be second reading next month in order for the, to be in effect when we start the interview process and the advertising.
And I agree, if we can't do it, then we take it out, but if we can do it, then
Yeah.
it does encourage board participation, which I think is a good thing.
Well, it
Is
would
this-
also,
I'm sorry,
to say it would also affect like the board scholarships.
scholarships too.
So, to me, I think it's important to try to leave it in there if at all possible.
Yes. Until somebody really
I'll
complains.
make the contacts first thing in the morning and let the board know as soon as I can. But I think what you also ought to consider is a situation where maybe the board member didn't voluntarily miss the interviews. Maybe the board member was sick. Maybe the board member was out of town.
It doesn't
Maybe the
matter.
board scheduled
Doesn't
it during
matter.
a time when the
Life
other board
is-
member couldn't
life
come.
To
is
me, it
life.
doesn't matter. It's hearing the interview and hearing why that person wants to be on that board. It's too important to hear
I agree.
that interview, to me. I mean,
Okay.
it's one thing to see the paper and get the resume or the CV of the person, but it's another thing to hear, what are you gonna do, on that board as a part of the Board of Trustees of Cape Fear Community College? What are you gonna do for that board scholarship? Those words are important. So to miss that and then to be part of the vote it's half a loaf. You can't do it.
I agree.
So leave it in there, and then if they contest, we'll call Raleigh. No, we'll follow, but we would like to have it in place for the next meeting.
Well, there's also the possibility of censorship. If the board thinks someone's not pulling their end, you could have a non-binding censorship where you vote to call that person out. But to make this part of the policy, I think it's a mistake, if you can do it.
Well,
So we put in there that we will censor any board member who shows up for the vote but not the interviews? We'll publicly call them?
That's independent action, it's outside of the policy.
stand out here in front.
I think scaffolding, right, you know,
Yeah,
something.
we just put it, we're gonna put them out here in
Tar
front.
feathering, right there.
Yeah, yeah,
Come on.
yeah.
It brings back memories of being put in the corner in elementary school.
Well, we're gonna put you in the
Adults
front.
cap, the
We'll
whole
put you in the front. Make you stand there and listen to us read our.
Thank you, Mr. Bullard, for that.
All right. Next item on the agenda on information is I have talked about, well, we've done this generally once a year. Here it is February, and we haven't done it yet. A board retreat to establish goals and objectives for ourselves and for the superintendent for the coming year.
Year's almost over.
Well, depends what year you're operating on. In any event, I think it serves a good purpose. It gives us an opportunity to get together and talk about things. So my first question would be, is there I think you need to maybe get with Ms. Adams, maybe we pick some dates and see who can and cannot participate. Probably would be a Saturday. In the past, I know Ms. Kavanaugh's always spoke of her weekend retreats. I'm not looking for a weekend retreat.
No, certainly
But-
not cooking.
But I am thinking that we maybe should plan to spend the greater part of a day developing topics and discussing topics and going through things. But I welcome anybody's feedback about that.
Well, I think that leaves a very broad responsibility to Mrs. Adams. Can we narrow it down to at least what month that we might want to have this retreat?
Well, I think sooner the better, because when are we going to be asked to make a decision, for example, concerning DC Virgo?
March.
March.
March?
See, we haven't really discussed that in
No, we
depth
haven't.
as to what the university's proposing, what we think about it. J.C. Rowe, for example, any future plans there? that,
Today's the 6th. Do you want to try to do something this month?
Well, we have the work session on the 20th.
You want to try to do something this month? We're not going to use the work session.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying we already have something scheduled.
Yeah, I think it'd be
toward the
tough to
end
do
of the
this
month.
month. I mean,
Pardon?
It would probably be pretty tough to do this month.
Yes, so
I mean, we're
something
only-
in March?
You're looking, well, you really got 3 Saturdays before the next board meeting, where you would discuss some of these issues, 17th, 24th, or the 3rd of March.
Of March.
Yeah, 3rd of March. February,
February 17th is a Saturday, February 24th is a Saturday, March 3rd is a Saturday.
Well, the board meeting in March is March 6th.
6th,
So
correct.
are we going to vote at that time on Virgo at the university?
Yes,
I'd like to do something before then. I'd like some in-depth, I don't know what's planned for that meeting.
well, if we've got those 3 days, we can have Ms. Adams send a poll out on availability for those 3 days. Would that work, Mr. Chair?
yes, it would. It would.
Well, what days are we talking?
17th, 24th of February, or the 3rd of March.
Okay.
I can't do the 24th.
Okay,
I can't
I
do
can't do
the
the
3rd.
3rd.
okay. Can you do the 17th?
I can.
But you
You
can still
can?
vote, don't worry about it.
That one, please. 17th of
But I'm,
Yes.
right now I'm supposed to be in Greensboro the night of the 16th, so if it's later in the day, I could probably make
You know,
it.
something comes up.
I'm coaching basketball in the morning, so I can do later in the day too.
That's true.
We could do an 11 o'clock start.
February.
That would work.
We did 11 to 4 on the
Littleby's
17th.
Last basketball game. Gotta be there.
Yeah,
Would 11 o'clock work, Mr. Wortman?
on the 17th?
On the 17th?
I'm gonna have to wait and check. I'm not sure what time we're getting back from Greensboro. But y'all, go ahead, and if everyone else can do it, if 6 out of 7 can do it, then I'll maybe I can like conference call in at the beginning part of it.
Okay.
All right,
So we're good at the 17th, 11 to 4,
that's our, looks like that's
tentative,
tentative.
February 17th.
All right, Ms. Adams would need a list of topics, almost immediately. I've heard DC Virgo as one of the topics. Yeah.
And Roe?
Well, I would also suggest we have a discussion, as a board, you approved middle school lines with a very aggressive timeline. So probably a discussion about those timelines as well.
Mr. Chairman, I will be out of town that day, but the board typically doesn't need me at its retreats,
No, we don't need you.
so.
We got two attorneys, we can probably handle it. All right, so. if
but we
you-
haven't said where, or is that something?
Okay, I hadn't got there yet.
Oh, okay.
We can do it in 301 upstairs at the central office
No,
building.
I have a better suggestion. Have you contacted them? Have you contacted the airport?
I don't know about that specific date, but I'd be happy to check tomorrow morning.
But you
If
gotta
you-
walk 15 miles out there.
I know, that's the thing.
What?
We do not get priority parking, and if it's raining and we're walking 2 blocks to get to the
2
building.
blocks?
I did the last
Longer than
time.
Well, then that's because you didn't park in short-term
We
parking.
didn't have a chance.
Why not?
They said we couldn't.
No, they never told me that.
parking? Let's just do
I
301.
wasn't.
301 are here.
301 works fine.
Yep.
I want us to have a place, and I think Mr. Michelle will agree, that we can sit close enough to each other so that we can look at each other in the face and talk openly without having to crane our necks as we did the
Tim, you
last
can cook.
time.
What?
What? You can cook for us? Get something good to eat.
There's a McDonald's next door, I'm happy to bring breakfast.
Yes,
There you go. Now you're talking.
all right.
But yeah, I can cook if you need me to.
Just make sure there's something on the menu they had to go out and kill. You know, pastries and.
All right, well, wherever y'all want to do it, I don't understand. I mean, the airport's so
301?
much better. more entertaining.
Doesn't matter to me at all.
Ms.
301 has a lovely view of the parking lot.
Yes, right.
So we would be focused on what we're doing rather than looking out at the planes coming in. Oh, good.
That's right, we got that little private airstrip right next to us.
Quasi.
Adds some excitement to it, yeah, yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
All right, so we're talking 301 on the 17th
February.
of February, starting at 11 o'clock.
Okay. That's good.
I don't know why you Anyway, okay. Next item on the agenda, Superintendent's Report, 2018-19 Budget and Legislative Priorities, Appendix E. Dr. Markley.
I'm gonna ask Mary Hazel if she'll grab somebody and bring forward those two, pieces of chart paper in the back. You have these on paper in front of you. These are, we review with our teacher advisory group and with our principal group legislative priorities. This is what they've discussed so far. And so tonight, really want to know, are there things that we're missing from the board that you would like us to add as we get ready for our legislative luncheon in March? I would say that on your sheet, you've got enhancement positions. My hope is by the legislative breakfast that we've cleared that issue.
So,
My hope is that issue disappear.
So what are you wanting us to do?
All right, first of all, look at the list. As a board, is there anything on there that you don't want to discuss with
All right, which one did you hope would be settled by?
the first one.
first one, K3?
Okay.
So where did this list come from?
This list was generated through senior staff, through principals, and through teachers at our teacher advisory. So,
I think it includes everything that we've talked about and had concerns about, as well as the members at the schools and the community.
is there anything that you would like to add to this list?
How about, something about CTEC? About,
All right, CTEC,
Vocational,
continued support,
And
Yep.
additional. yeah,
additional support.
Yeah.
One thing I would ask you guys, you've seen the conversations around Isaac Bear, since that funding is outside the mainstream, is that something you want to address at the legislative luncheon? Is a facility for Isaac Bear as part of the,
If legislature can provide funding for it, yeah, I think it's,
Well, I think they need to be aware whether they can do anything about it or not.
all right, so we can put that on there. When we see state funding for facilities over here, we'll do a sub-point for Isaac Bear, a permanent facility.
What's the thought behind the state funding for facilities? What's the,
Hopefully, that's a discussion about a statewide bond. That would be a matching, there's,
Okay.
the House and Senate are discussing a large bond for school construction.
there was an article in the paper a couple of days ago, said the state's ability was now $1.4 billion in funding that they could handle.
So, I mean, I know last year there was a proposal in the House for that. I don't know where the Senate is, so at least bring as a discussion point. Because that would, if we could do that and then match it with local bond money or local money, then we leverage more, we leverage time as well as facilities.
For which particular project are we talking?
Well,
Isaac Bear
our
or
long-term ones coming forward, not for Isaac Bear per se, but for the
All of our
school at
projects.
River Lights, middle school that we need up,
And CTEC.
The original projection was what, 25 million?
2.5 billion, I believe, was what was the House proposal last year.
But
25 million.
allocated
Back
here
when-
would have been.
Our share, the last time they had put the numbers would be about 25 million. So if we get 25 there, leverage it with local dollars, that's
Do you
huge
want to,
plus.
do you want to say anything about the potentiality of preparing for a local bond issue in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think before we do that, we need to have a plan in place because that's gonna facilitate questions.
Yeah, Eddie, we've got the facility plan coming back up to the board.
Yeah, that doesn't come back up until 2020. But I think that we could go ahead and start those discussions and you know, based on our old plan plus any new items that we're aware of.
Yeah, if we have a retreat on the 17th, I can have Eddie put together a list of the most important potential projects coming up, so you can see that.
Because at one time, I know, before we built Holly Shelter in Castle Hayne, we envisioned a Veterans Park, for example, up at the northern end. We'll call it President's Park. Is that dead, Eddie, as far as a high school? Has that been taken off the table and completely?
Well, I think originally we were looking at a northern Veterans Park. I don't think the county, you know, was interested
No, the county kept
in
backing
doing the
out on
park
us.
piece. There's still some land that's undeveloped, so, you know, potentially, you could build a high school, but I think in looking at our enrollment projections, I would question really the need for that high school. And,
Yeah, because if we do what we talked about with Trask, that really covers our capacity need heading into the future.
Except for but would put the emphasis back on a middle school, because in order to do that, we'd have to do a middle
Because
school.
you could always, as we did many years ago with the ninth grade centers, to alleviate the pressure on the high school, that would be a less expensive route to go.
Because you know you're gonna ask for a certain amount from the county, and you know you're not gonna get that amount. So you've got to,
I just wanted to raise it to you.
yep.
I'm a little hesitant to put the facility for Isaac Bear on there. Just, if we're gonna focus on one, I would wanna focus on CTEC.
All right.
And I'm not trying to sound, I gotta be careful with how I'm saying this, but it was UNCW's choice to use that facility for Isaac Bear. They have other potentials, you know, WEX is in a building out on Cape Fear's campus. You know, it was, again, UNCW, I think, should also be bringing that forward and trying to figure out space-wise where they could put it.
Yeah, and
So I
we've-
think that should be in concert with them.
I
But
think
I want to focus on CTEC.
you can, is there a way you can mention, I mean, by that time, you should probably have met with UNCW, or depending on
Yeah.
Chancellor.
Matt, we've had discussion with the UNCW folks. I know they've got a parent who's pushing, advocating strongly for that. So that's moving forward regardless of whether it's part of this discussion or not, so.
Maybe that's something else we could tie into Trask Coliseum, Isaac
It
Bear.
ain't gonna happen.
When we're
I
discussing,
already raised that question.
when we're
Nothing's gonna
discussing
change.
DC Virgo.
what do you mean by the school availability? Is that what that is?
School accountability.
Accountability form? What, can you give
Sure.
a brief explanation what you mean by that?
Yeah, if you look at the way schools are graded now, it's 80% proficiency and 20% growth.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, so that 20% we think for our schools is as critical as the proficiency piece. Because we have a lot of students who come to us far behind, who still grow more than a year's worth of learning within a year, but may not make that jump to proficiency. And this formula doesn't recognize that effort of those schools the way it's currently set up.
The sales tax exemption, has anyone put a number on that, Mary Hazel? What that would cost the state for them to do that?
I don't have it statewide, but I can see if it's available.
It may be that the number's so high
I think it
that
is.
we gotta think outside the box and figure out a way to channel, y'all might not like this, but channel, some of the purchasing through county government and see if there's a way to get reimbursement that way.
And we're certainly doing that with
I know
our
you
local
are in some
agreement, but
cases.
I think statewide, it's an issue of a lot of extra paperwork and temporarily, a loss of resources. And then you never get the state portion back. So it's just an inequity between LEAs and other types of governments in North Carolina. So just having the same exemption that counties and cities and other agencies have would be helpful.
So this is a statewide goal, not a local goal.
Yeah,
Get
we
more
already
money.
we're eligible to receive the local portion back. So this is a state goal.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, your argument is a statewide argument,
Yes.
not an argument for how can New Hanover school system receive
That is correct.
that.
And I
Yeah, this
can
is
tell
one
you,
targeted toward the legislators that'll be present more so than the county commissioners.
What about the cap on the educational bond, educational lottery money? How about asking them about raising that?
It's not a cap anymore. They've actually pretty much done away with specific funding from most of the lottery funds.
Well, yeah, but for capital, they have capped it at $100 million, no matter how much they take in.
I think that could sort of be added just into the need for additional state funding, whether it was in the form of a bond or some other type.
Yeah, so when we look at state facilities, we would subpoint either a statewide school bond or a change in the allocation formula for state capital funds.
Okay, as long as that's included.
What about the MTSS support positions? Can you explain that?
Well,
Dr.
Dr.
Smith will be
Smith
glad to
chime in.
for you.
You were waiting to speak, weren't you?
A little bit. So the state is now requiring students with disabilities to be identified in a different process, and that process involves using the multi-tiered system of support. And so it's very different for schools because they're looking at multiple data sources. The previous process looked at a discrepancy between their achievement and their ability, and so there's much more I hate to say it this way, but paperwork involved, which just documents the interventions that students are receiving. And so for schools that have large groups of students that require more interventions, those schools are struggling to find the resources within their existing staff to meet this obligation. And even our schools that don't have large numbers of students, it's a very cumbersome process. We believe it's a better process, but it still is, it's cumbersome.
Did
So,
you put a number on the number of positions that you would need?
so it varies just a little bit in some of our Title I schools where we do have large numbers of school students who are receiving Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Some of those schools already have 2 positions supporting this. In other schools, they just have 1, or it may be a person is serving in the role of an interventionist and also an MTSS coordinator for the school. At the very least, it would be a position per school. We've been implementing in elementary for, I want to say, the last 4 years, and so they've really just shifted their resources. But as we're moving beyond middle school and high school and reaching that 2020, 2021 deadline, it's going to be even more critical. Yeah.
And as we're putting these together, if there's something, we always include things that we thank the county for, increasing funding, support for some particular programs. If there's something specific you would like me to add to that thank you list, either at the state or local level, please email me and I'll make sure we include that on the list. I will send you a copy of the presentation, obviously, before that day to take a look at.
And Dr. Markley, in reading all of these, it could represent any school system with their needs. So I know that you're on many committees and work with other superintendents. What are they doing to get this message out?
Some of these are the same. A lot of counties, especially the larger ones who have a large delegation, do a similar breakfast or lunch to what we're doing. One-on-one meetings with legislators. When you guys meet with elected officials, I'm hoping you have similar conversations with those folks. Because as elected officials to elected officials, I think you have a little more, elected officials will listen to elected officials sometimes more than the everyday person in that position. So as we put this list together, I'm hoping it's a discussion basis for you to have conversations with these folks as well.
Anything else?
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next item on our agenda, census items, personnel, Appendix F, Dr. Welmers.
Can we keep this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request the board approve the personnel matters as presented.
They were only there if you guys made a really, really long list. I need you to narrow it down. I know how much you love that process.
Interactive learning, I like that.
All right, consensus item, Dr. Welmers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request the board approve the personnel matters as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It is approved. Item B, budget amendments, Appendix G, Ms. Small.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request the board's approval of the budget amendments as submitted. The most significant amendment is an increase in state funding for the teacher bonuses that were paid in January.
Is there a motion to approve it? I get a motion and a second?
I'll take second.
Okay. Any discussions or questions?
I would just, she mentioned the teacher bonuses. We had a large number of our teachers who qualify for those bonuses, and they were significant bonuses for our teachers, and I commend the state for doing that. I'd also like the state to look at a second piece where sometimes the whole school contributes to the growth of those students. So I want to recognize those individual teachers, but for schools that as a whole make progress, I'd love for a way to recognize that the contributions of, example, kindergarten teachers to third grade reading at some point. So,
What else, kind of like the ABC program where
Yep.
they,
You need to put that on your list?
probably.
Maybe you, our local commissioners, could help us with that if the state doesn't.
All right. Now, I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is approved. All right, old business, bus driver employment pool, Appendix J, Dr. Welmers.
I didn't see a lot of hires for bus drivers on your personnel list.
No, ma'am, there weren't a lot. We were trying, but we didn't get a whole bunch in this one. And being in HR, I do know the definition of harassment. And since this is the third time I've gone over this with you, I know that there's forms online if you want to fill them out with my name. But with that said, what we want to do tonight is we took the information from last time we met and we talked. And a lot of us looked at it in different ways and made changes. And I think we've got something that I think kind of strikes a balance. But before we get there, let me just, there were questions asked last month that I wanted to get a quick answer to you about. And I know Nance went through some of these, and Ken's going to back me up, said he'll be standing behind me in all of this. So right now, as of last week, we had roughly 17 driver vacancies. About 10 folks out, we have 10 vacancies, about 7 folks out sick, and I think today and yesterday it was even worse with the flu. Why do we have a shortage? What we see and what Ken sees, candidates can't pass the written test, the driving test, they can't get the DOT medical card, and or they don't have a clean driving record or they have a criminal record. the current remedies that we're doing that are in place, and I know this was something you all asked about, we reduce the number of buses we use every day. If you don't have the drivers, obviously you reduce the number of buses that roll. We double routes, doing a short route and a long route, so that one's quick and one's long. That way the bus driver's not doing too long or too short. We advertise on every website we can get this on, on every social media site we can get this on, and wherever they'll let Ken park a bus with the banner on it. At least it stays there 3 to 4 days and somebody hauls it off. We increase opportunities for bus drivers to get benefits. One of the things we look at. But 80% of our bus drivers right now receive benefits, meaning they're working over 30 hours a week. So that's a good figure, and that's something that Ken has worked on for a long time to get that figure up. Our pay increase this year was about 6% for bus drivers. We reimburse them for their CDL license to get it, for their medical license. The whole total of that comes to about $250. I said about $400, so I was a little high last time. So we're looking at a way to increase that. And one of the things that you all said was you really didn't want to look at TAs as an across-the-board requirement. So what we did was we looked at how other systems are doing it, and if we could go to my PowerPoint, that would be good. Ladies. There we go. If you go to the program goals, which is the next one, we increase the number of drivers. We want to decrease the use of bus driver substitutes, administrative staff, provide opportunities for higher pay, establish percentages. And one of the things that we want to do, you can see in number 3, is provide opportunities for higher pay and benefits to more, thank you, and more classified employees. And we want to establish a percentage of designated teacher assistants, bus driver positions. Now let me jump to the next one. It's all about definitions, and this is an important thing to kind of get hold of. A teacher assistant and a teacher assistant / bus driver are 2 separate positions in this plan. Okay, so they're actually 2 different types of people doing this plan. The teacher assistant is the one that you know about right now. Requirement of the hours to be highly qualified, the requirement that we do. The teacher assistant bus driver will also meet that qualification, but also get a CDL and be able to drive. It doesn't mean they're going to drive every day, but it means that they can drive when needed. And that's an important thing to kind of get your head wrapped around, is that they're 2 different positions, okay? What we want to do is establish a percentage in every school, and most of this is elementary schools, of a number of designated bus driver teacher assistants or teacher assistant bus drivers. The example being there that if we have 10 teacher assistants at Bellamy, then Ken would work with the principal and work with us, and we would come up probably with some kind of committee to look at how many positions do we want to designate there that are going to be teacher assistants, and then 1 or 2 positions that would be teacher assistant bus driver positions. Okay? So that's an important point. The other thing that's very important to this, and Mary Hazel can I think chime in on this because she's got some real good insight into it, is we want to move teacher assistants to a biweekly pay period. She met with teacher assistants, talked about that. Mary Hazel, would you like to share that?
Just we met with teacher assistants and some other non-certified employees because the recommendation is actually to move all 10-month non-certified to bi-monthly payroll. And we already have many of our 10-month school employees, all the part-time, the 10-month custodians and the child nutrition workers are already getting paid every other month, and that is a real benefit to them. It's just the transition is difficult, you know, because you're the month you make the change, it's a little bit difficult. But the advantage, until we can get the teacher assistants on the same hourly payroll as the bus drivers, we don't have the option of these combined positions. So that's why it's tied to this. But we are requesting that all the 10-month non-certified be switched at the same time.
Thank you.
So the pay wouldn't be a change in pay, it would be a change in the timing of getting paid?
That's correct, yep. This would not begin until the 2018-19 school year, which gives us time to prepare for it. And I want to emphasize this, no current employees, except those designated as bus drivers right now, and that may include some coaches because our contracts require coaches to drive buses, but no one else would be required to drive a bus that is a current employee. So that's an important thing. Folks worry about that. No one else is required to.
That wouldn't mean that a coach would drive a yellow bus. I mean, you're talking about the
Right.
activity buses.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Crossing over the white and the yellow bus.
We're not gonna put the coach running a run after
No,
school.
no, I don't think so, no. Each school will be assigned a number of teacher assistant bus driver positions, okay? Let's go back to our example of there's 10 bus driver positions at Bellamy. We now are going to say one of those 10 teacher assistant positions will now be a teacher assistant bus driver position, okay? But there's 10 assistants at Bellamy. Last year, 13 teacher assistants who will be eligible for this plan left us, and we rehired. So this isn't a high turnover area. So those 10 teacher assistants stay right in place until there's attrition, until one of those teacher assistants leaves. It may not be next year, it may be the next year, but whenever that occurs, then that one designated teacher assistant would then be the open position. And we would hire that teacher assistant bus driver into that position. So the attrition is the only thing that will take this. We're not moving anyone out to make this work, okay? If someone else wanted to do it, now that, like Mary Hazel said, we changed the pay scale so that someone can do it, and another teacher says, well, I'd really like to do this. I like the extra money of the bus driving position, then we would allow them to do that, and they could do that. But we wouldn't require anyone else to do it. And no one currently employed would be required to do it, okay? If this just says if one wants to do it, they can right now or beginning next year. The pay schedule is what Mary Hazel was describing. We would move that to a bi-weekly. The teacher assistants were excited about that. We would get through that at the beginning by looking at giving them a $1,000 check that would cover what would normally be those weeks where they wouldn't get it if they chose to do that. They wouldn't have to do that, but if they chose that, they could get that, and then we would take that out of their paycheck over the next months so we could cover that 2-week period. Once you get that transition done, there's not an issue, but that first one, as Mary Hazel said, it is a little tricky. This is our incentives and support. We pay the fees. We would pay the employee for hours driving a bus on the bus driver scale equal to the number of years they have experience with us. So if they're a teacher assistant, they've been 10 years with us and now they want to move over, they would move up on the scale that way. We're working right now on part-time custodians and child nutrition employees to try to get them interested into this. And we're doing other things right now to try to recruit those folks. They've been involved in these discussions, and we're trying to do that. We would do a 6-hour split with the bus driver. They'd only drive the teacher assistant bus driver. They drive in the morning or they drive in the afternoon. So we wouldn't be taking out of the class both ends of the day. We would locate the buses at the employee school, which would require Ken to take care of the buses there, so they don't have to travel to go get on a bus. It's right there. That's the plan. We tried to take into consideration what you all brought up last time and make this as non-invasive, yet, and now keep in mind, let's just say that we do one position for all the schools, the elementary schools, who could possibly be eligible in this, who don't have other populations that wouldn't be there. It'd be roughly 22 positions. Now, 22 positions over time, that doesn't solve all of Ken's problems to try to get a bus driver every day, but it certainly helps. And you would have a person on staff who would be able to drive a bus, who would know what was going on buses, and they could help with the white buses if necessary. There's a field trip or something like that. So we would start at the kind of the minimal process that would only open up on attrition. No one's forced out, no one's made to do this.
Have you inquired as to why? Because do bus drivers make more than a teacher assistant per hour?
Yes.
Okay. Have you inquired as to why some of these people have, why some custodial people, cafeteria people, teacher assistants, why they have chosen not to take advantage of this?
Well, we haven't done a survey to ask them directly, but what we get on feedback is,
what if they can make more money and they get benefits, why wouldn't they want to do it? Is there a reason that's holding them back? Is it they don't feel comfortable driving a bus? Is it because they don't want to deal with the kids on the bus? What is it?
You're warm. You're pretty well hitting it all.
I don't,
Yep.
but until
Bad
you
enough
know
when the
the answer,
classroom's not moving.
Right.
until you know the answer to that question, I don't know how you can structure a program to try to encourage some of these people to become bus drivers.
Well, I mean, I agree with you to a point. Those are all reasons why individuals don't want to do it. Some of them don't want to be in a situation with the kids on a bus. Some of them are afraid to drive a bus.
Right.
I mean, it's a big vehicle, and you're in this place called Wilmington, and it seems like every day a bus is a target. I mean, every day another bus gets hit. How do you hit a bus? I mean, come on. But that happens.
I know
And
people have done it.
no, we seem to get it every day. I mean, we wait on the next notice that a bus has been hit. But it's hard to drive in Wilmington. It's scary, and a lot of folks don't want to do it. They also don't want the time. They want a part-time job. They're in this to work as a part-time person. They don't want the full day extended. They're either not worried about the benefits, or that's not something that really is attractive to
But you're
them.
speculating on top of that.
No, I mean, they've told us this to
Oh,
some
okay,
degree.
so-
I haven't done a general survey.
I mean, I think that would be important because I'm wondering, and it's just me, I'm wondering how much the message is getting out to them that, here's an opportunity for you to make some extra money, to get benefits. Now, if you don't want to drive, or you can't drive because of some health reason, I mean, that's the other thing I'm wondering about. How many people do you think will be able to qualify will pass? I mean, the health requirements and the driving tests and all of that. If you can't, out of, what did you say, you had like 30?
Typically have 30 in a class, and we may get 2 to 3 out of the class
Yeah,
that pass.
I mean,
But I will tell you, when you look at the counties around us, and I believe we sent you that data, nearly every county around us and every large district requires TAs to do this. So it's obvious that as a group, the TAs can pass this test, they can do it if necessary to become a bus driver.
Well, I would agree with Mr. Higgins in that we have not tried to tap our employees. We've not even done a survey. I asked the question at the last meeting, how many people did we have eligible? And Ira came up, and with your help, Dr. Wilmers, said minimum of 250 of those 400 might qualify for that. I believe if we want them to help us, and by them helping us, they get more pay, they get more retirement. It is a win-win in there. It's not for everybody. I know that. 100 years ago, I drove a school bus. But I will say that we need to reach out to them. I've mentioned this to Mr. Nance, I think we need to put an all-out effort at marketing. And, I mean, I would get, for example, you invite 50 people. You bring them in. You give them a presentation on, let me tell you what our need is, and let me tell you how it benefits you. I struggle with the future TA being a bus driver. I don't think you're going to get the nurturing level that you're getting now in the classroom. And I don't think that if teachers had an opportunity to weigh in, I think they would think that their overall operation would not be as positive as it is today. So my nickel's worth is to say, I think we should go back to the drawing board, design a very slick but accurate and appropriate presentation to these people. We're in the teaching business. We can teach these people. And we heard a month ago that it's a very hard test to pass. Well, gosh, we're in the teaching business, education business. We can do this.
well, it's the same test that long-haul truck drivers have to pass.
Whatever, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
with all due respect, Dr. Wilmers, I know it's been tough, Mr. Nance. I know that. And you explained very eloquently the challenges that you have. This is a long-term solution, in my opinion, with the slippery slope.
I just wonder if what you said, I mean, the fact that there are people out there who are really afraid to get behind the steering wheel of a yellow bus.
Well, I'm sure there are.
Well, I'm sure, but here's what I'm getting ready to say. What if you had and I don't know if you can do this, but what if you had a bus driving day, and you took one of the white buses, not necessarily one of the yellow buses, but 6 of one, half dozen the other, and took it out to some place that had a very open area, you know, maybe, I don't know, Ashley or someplace where you had a lot of open, and just set them into a seat, not on a public road, but on, and let them see what it's like to sit, you know, in that seat, drive that bus. They probably, are they automatic now?
A lot of them are, yes.
Okay. See what it's like to drive it, see, you know, get a feel of what, you know, I mean, it's like a 15-year-old, first time they get in an automobile. You know, some of them are, well, I'm not sure about this thing. I mean,
I'm not sure Mr. Bullard would let me do that.
Yeah.
well,
Absolutely
Well,
not.
would we,
we couldn't, you saying we can't do that? We could not do that?
Not with 15-year-olds.
No, I'm not, no, I said.
Putting an unlicensed
I
driver
said
into an activity bus.
No, I said a 15-year-old getting into their car the first time and driving.
Oh, okay.
No, but I'm saying that if, you know, to find out, yeah, I mean, I could imagine, it would be a scary prospect of driving, but maybe they got in it and they, you know, had 5 or 10 minutes of just kind of getting a feel of what the bus is and everything.
We
It doesn't
would
mean they'd be
still-
able to drive, but I'm just saying it might dispel some of their fear.
we would, but we would still have the 15-year-old sit on the seat behind them and yell at them while they did this.
Well,
Just so they get the full experience.
Whatever you feel like you need to do.
I think I agree with Mr. Sorry, getting back to the conversation a little bit. I agree with what Mr. Higgins originally said and Mr. Shell about maybe trying to tap some additional resources. And
John, could you, and Eddie, could you speak to the efforts you've made to recruit folks now? I mean, you haven't done the full court press that's been described, but how have you pitched this to those folks?
Well, in talking to Mr. Nance and Ms. Small, yeah, I know that whenever we have, you know, part-time child nutrition workers, or they're hiring part-time child nutrition workers, you know, she makes them aware of the opportunities to drive a bus. Whenever we have a part-time person leaving or talks about being interested in or getting a full-time job, may not be leaving for another position, but they may just approach their supervisor or the kitchen manager and say, hey, I'm really interested in moving to a full-time position. You know, we again offer them, you know, the opportunity to drive a bus. You know, we've done that for cafeteria workers and custodians. Now, I will say in our custodians, our improvement plan is to eliminate the part-time positions. And we're having the same problems that Ken has in vacancies, and you know, it's very difficult to attract and retain custodial part-time positions. So we are moving away from that. We have posted we've posted signs at every one of our schools. We've advertised all over Wilmington, and we're just now posting signs in our cafeterias, in our kitchens. You know, so we want to, you know, we really want to direct, we want to, you know, ask the cafeteria workers again. You know, we have not put together a presentation. You know, we could put together a presentation. We could give them a tour of a school bus. You know, we could do more. No question, and we will. I just don't think it's going to result in the numbers that you think it is, and solve our problem.
But that's because you don't know why they don't want to drive.
Well, like Mr. or Dr. Welmer said, we haven't done a survey, but we talk to the employees. You know, when we're asking them about, well, would you consider driving a bus? Or, you know, we hear those stories. No, we haven't done an official survey, but I don't think those results would vary much from what the employees are already telling us.
Is it mainly behavior of students on the bus?
That has a lot to do with it.
Dr. Wellness, what would be, and Mary Hazel may say, no, we couldn't, but the possibility of TA bus drivers, first time, if we can convince them to get their license, giving them a bus monitor for a period of time to help with keeping the children settled long enough for the driver to get
But you gotta hire them
acclimated.
first. You gotta get them to take the job first.
Well, but if they're on that pathway of giving them a little bit more security and the help that they're going to get oriented.
How about some extra money?
Well, money doesn't solve the problem if you don't want to drive.
We have monitors on the buses where we have the most issues with, okay, but that still doesn't resolve the problem. Unless you can hire monitors for all those buses, eventually when you take that monitor off, behavior goes back to what it was before. You don't, and whereas the monitor helps it some, take the monitor off, it goes back to where it was before, so.
Yeah, I think that's a problem that really needs to be addressed. How many cameras do we have on these buses? My understanding is 4.
4, yes, sir.
And with 4 cameras on a bus that clearly demonstrates or shows who the problem is, that can't be handled on the school level? Because I know it's not your responsibility there, but that's a large part of the problem. And I don't blame these people sometimes for not wanting to get on a bus because they're going down the road and you don't want them driving with their eyes in the rearview mirror. But we could put a stop to this misbehavior if we really set our minds to do it, and that's the main problem. And I've been saying it for years. Whether it be in a classroom or on a bus, we need to have order and discipline in our schools. We're jeopardizing the safety of all these children on these buses. But for some reason, we can't seem to get these problems, and I know that if you take them off the bus, sometimes you can't get to school. Well, you homeschool then, or send the assignments home or whatever. We have to set a tone that we're not going to tolerate this behavior, and we tolerate entirely too much, in my humble opinion.
Well, again, I'm not a education expert, but I think when you take them off the bus, which sometimes that it does happen, it doesn't change their behavior. When you bring them back, you take them off the bus for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it may be. When they come back on the bus, behavior's still the same thing. So,
well, you take them off again. I mean, it's not a right to ride a school bus. It's a privilege. We should not allow these children to jeopardize the safety of all these other children on the bus and interfere with their education. We do the same thing in a classroom. Well, if I take them off the bus, they can't get to school and I can't educate them. I understand that, and I don't want that to happen. But by the same token, I don't want that one child interfering with a whole bus where maybe they could get hurt or possibly killed or whatever in these accidents, because like you say, they're driving in Wilmington. But yet we seem to tolerate it, and in a school campus, the same thing. You don't want to send the child home or whatever, but how about the other 20-some children in that classroom and their instruction that's being hampered in some poor teacher that can't teach?
well, if you look at our buses, it's normally, where we have the behavior issues is sometimes it's 1 or 2 students, but a lot of times it's a large majority of the students on the bus. I mean, that's what we see each and every day. It's just not normally, where we have the biggest behavior issues, it's a large part of the bus, not just 1 or 2 students.
But they don't believe us. Personal testimony, I suspended a whole bus one time, many years ago. I tell you what, they straightened up. Suspend the whole bus.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is it becomes the parent's responsibility. If the kid doesn't get to school, then social services shows up and has a come to Jesus meeting with the parents, and the parents either make sure the kid gets to school, make sure the kid behaves, and,
Or blame the school system for not getting them to school.
well, no, or they
And then
end up in
scores and
court.
load becomes
what's
They end up in
that's what
court. I mean, if we, I think taking a reasonable line, as Mr. Hayes suggests, with those kids might tend to make life on that school bus a little bit more I mean, it's not gonna be quiet, it's not gonna be a church, but, you know, jumping up, running around, screaming, yelling, throwing stuff. If we've got cameras on those buses, we need to be able to identify, and then we bring the parents in and let Johnny.
4 cameras on each bus.
And when they said, oh, Johnny didn't do that, well, let's look at the video.
Well, I don't love the idea of TAs being bus drivers, but you know what? They're gonna be able to identify the students. So,
I didn't hear what you
I
said.
said I don't love the idea of TAs being bus drivers, but they're gonna be able to identify the students.
Well, if they're in
And
the
it might
class.
help with the behavior issues, having a TA as a driver.
I think Ms. Nichols made a good point in that, I don't know if it'd be practical, but with a new TA that is going to drive a bus, would it be possible for a certain time frame there to have a bus monitor on their bus till they get comfortable with it?
Yes, sir, we could do that. Like I said, we have monitors on all the EC buses, but that's a different situation. But we have probably 12 or 14 monitors that we use on all the other buses where we have behavior issues.
I'll volunteer to help.
Okay.
You can't work for the school system.
No, you don't have to pay me. I'll go along
No,
just
I don't know if you can volunteer, but.
You're
I can
suspended,
see
and you're
the
suspended, and
headline
you're.
now.
But going back to your original question about why people do not want to drive a school bus, certainly behavior is part of it. I think some of it too is just some people don't want to have to take tests because there are written tests you have to take. There's a driving test. And some of it's maybe because of health issues, I think, like you mentioned. Like I said, starting this year, you have to get a DOT medical card, which is more restrictive when it comes to people with health problems being able to drive a school bus. So we can certainly go back and survey individuals, but I think when you ask them, it'll be one of those 3 reasons. Either this behavior on the bus, which, again, we have a lot of buses there are no issues with, okay, that we have never hear anything about. Then we have other buses there are a lot of behavior issues. So it all depends on the bus and the students. But again, I think you went and asked, and certainly, like Mr. Shell said, I'm sure a lot of people would like to have the benefits. But I think what holds them back is part of it's behavior on the bus. You know, part of it is the fact having to take written tests, and some people don't like to take written tests. And some of it maybe is the fear that, you know, of just having to go through the medical piece of it and trying to pass all that to be a school bus driver. And all those things are there for very good reasons, because when you transport students to and from school, it's probably one of the most important jobs there is out there. And it would be for me if I had kids on the bus. But we're just trying to find a solution. You know, every day my biggest worry, every day, is kids standing on the side of the road for 30 or 45 minutes because the bus is late and because they're getting to school late. And we're just trying to come up with a solution. Whatever it may be, we just want a solution, because that's my biggest worry, that something will happen to a child who's left standing on the side of the road for 45 minutes when a bus should have been there at 8 o'clock. It gets there at 8:45 because we got 28 buses without drivers, which we had this past Monday, and we covered everything was all said and done, but there were kids that didn't get picked up to 30 or 45 minutes later. So that's my concern every day, is having students waiting on the side of the road and we cannot pick them up because we don't have enough bus drivers.
And so the more immediate approach, since we're talking about hiring TAs that have this over time, that's a long-term solution. But more, a shorter-term approach is to tap the hundreds of employees we have. I'm not talking about a survey either. I'm talking about an invitation to a meeting where we put on a legitimate, this is how you benefit, and don't hide the perils. It's a challenging job. Some of you will do very well at this, some of you won't, but we'd like to give you an opportunity to participate. And if I was a nutrition worker and I was working 30 hours a week and I had a chance to work 40, and now my benefits go to 100%, which is big, and then I have the opportunity to my retirement to grow over time.
What makes you think that you're
I think people would at least think about it if they were given the opportunity and it was sold about what you can do. I feel like we focus too much on what we can't do. And we've got hundreds of employees. We ought to at least try.
And we're going to do that. You know, we had a conversation about this, and our plans are, you know, we sent flyers out
or HR did back about 3 or 4 weeks ago, okay? And then this week, we sent out a more specific flyer aimed at child nutrition. And we're gonna do what you might call the tour. I myself, and maybe one of you, we can go around each school, and we're going to give a presentation. Won't last very long, 5 or 10 minutes, as all the benefits of driving a school bus, and also talk about some of the challenges, you know. But if that solves our problem, that'll be great, okay? Because again, we just want to make sure we get the kids to and from school on time. Because I can tell you, the schools will tell you too, besides just the risk of kids standing on the side of the road every day, it's also missing class time. I mean, I get phone calls from parents all the time, what, my kid's missing first period. What are y'all gonna do about it? And we're doing everything we can to do about it, and we're open to everything, all right? We're willing to try anything, and we'll certainly try the child nutrition approach to see what happens. And then after that, we'll come back and tell you what the results are. And hopefully I'll come back and say, man, we got 50 drivers now. We're in great shape. But I may come back and tell you, we got 2, and that's it. So I need to come back to the drawing board and say, let's try something else. But we'll certainly do that and see what we can get from the child nutrition department.
How many people do you think are employed by this school system that have a CDL that y'all don't use? Basically, what I'm thinking of is coaches.
Coaches and a few TAs that got their CDL back when it was going to be required when they first started Head Start. And then after it was decided they would not have to drive a bus, they haven't driven since then. So coaches and a few Head Start, that's all I'm aware of anyway.
Okay, well, I mean, just wondered, when you get into really a bind, if it's not the season, I mean, I would, you know, basketball coach, no. But a football coach right now, I mean, there's no reason that you couldn't recruit one of them to come in and drive if you needed them. I mean, better than leaving a kid standing on the side of the road.
John, I have to have you answer that.
So that's what, Paul?
Yeah, I mean,
A couple of things. One is the buses aren't located on campus now, so you'd have to, if they have 4th period class, they've got to leave their school to go get that.
He's looking for stopgap measures, and I'm just thinking, there's probably 100 people in this school system that have a CDL license that aren't being called upon, and I'm not talking about regularly, but I mean called upon in a squeeze to come and help the school system out.
The coaches are going to be involved in teaching. I mean, they're teachers. So that's going to make it very difficult how you balance their schedule to help Ken out. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but they're not experienced in...
Not all of them are teaching. There are some that are not teaching.
But if they're a non-faculty coach, then I can't require them to get a CDL.
Well, I'm talking about if they have a CDL and if they are being paid by the school system to do something, such as coaching, they get paid for coaching, then if you get into a real bind, how come we cannot, I mean, you're here telling me that I need to get you more drivers, and I don't deny I need to get you some more drivers, but what I'm also hearing is you can't get people qualified to drive. You get 30 applicants and you get me 2. Why do you think anything's going to change if that's going to be, if that's what you're having happen? You've come to us several times, this isn't the only time, and said, okay, I had 18 last time and I got 1 out of it. I had 25, I got 3 out. I mean, I guess my question simply is, and I'm not trying to be hard to get along with, but my question is, why do you think anything's going to change when we can't get people to qualify who want to be bus drivers, but we can't get them to qualify as bus drivers?
Well, our thought is because other counties use this process to help cover their buses, that's the main, we went out and looked at what are other people doing to help resolve, and even they still have shortages even then. But we went to other counties and asked them, how are you trying to resolve the shortage of bus drivers? And most counties told us, not all counties, but most counties told us they use teacher assistants to help resolve part of that problem.
Because folks, the alternative is, if I can't find drivers, no matter what system we use, then they're going to have to come back with a recommendation for a 3-tier bus system, which will have kids at the bus stops earlier, and have some kids going to school at around 9 o'clock. That's the alternative you're looking at, and a three-tier system is not popular with
No, I
anyone.
know that. They tried that in Brunswick County, and it didn't.
So if you either gotta give me bus drivers, or you're looking at an unpopular option.
Can't manufacture them. We can't manufacture them.
Well, I mean,
But you gotta let me have the pool to find them.
Right.
Well, we gave
You
you a
got the
pool.
pool.
These
You gotta
guys,
tap it. You gotta sell it.
you don't think that they've been selling this to the folks out there to do this?
They
I-
just
we-
said they had.
Now, what they've said is they've met with every new hire that's come in.
What?
They've,
I keep hearing about this pool. Where's this pool you think we're going to create? They've been able to.
obviously, we're not going to create that pool, gentlemen.
Well, I'll give you my response, Ed, and that is, at the last meeting, we asked the question, how many nutrition employees would be eligible for this? Dr. Welmer said, original number was 400. Dr. Welmer said it's really more like 250. So then we started looking at that, and if we could
But
show
they've been
them-
eligible to drive the bus, and they're not stepping up to drive the bus.
If we could show them how they could benefit, how we would benefit, if you got 10%, you'd have a waiting list.
Well, I think the
But you
system.
gotta wanna make it happen.
I
You
think
talk
everybody
about what you
knows.
can't do, you can't do it. You're right.
I think everyone knows the situation we're in. Was this on for a vote tonight?
Yes.
Because I think that really we need to move forward, and I think y'all are making some good points, and it might gather a few maybe that have not been gathered to this point. But I think the overall, that's not going to be our overall solution. I think moving forward with something like this is the solution that we need to move forward with.
What about, like a signing bonus they don't get until they get their license, but it gives them more of an incentive to try, and maybe businesses would help us with that bonus. So
We can certainly look at
that might at least trigger, oh, I'm gonna get my $1,000, like everybody else is getting. So something that money won't talk, but at least it might get their attention to think about. Maybe they are not aware that the bus drivers make more money.
Well, I mean, out of the pool that Mr. Jeff's talking about, a lot of those have been exposed to that through their hire and where they are. But we could look at a bonus in that when we look at it, if we can find the money to do that.
Because we've got to transport these children safely and on time.
And let me ask that, I know that is a secondary issue involved in this, is we do need, depending upon where you go with the bus driver issue, we would very much like to move to the biweekly pay for these folks that Mary Hazel's talked to, and that helps us in the long run, even trying to get these folks on board. So if you would look at that as possibly a separate issue under this, that would help.
I think we owe them a vote. I think we belabored it enough.
We have, we have. So what are you asking us to vote on?
This plan, I'd like for you to approve the plan that.
Those 6 or 7 things that you had listed that you wanted to do? Okay. All right,
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We've discussed the daylights out of it. I'm gonna call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Got 2 nays. How many people got here?
You got
4. Got 6. All right, got
Two.
4 ayes. Lisa, you voted for it, right?
No. Oh, yes,
You did. 4 ayes, 2 nays. It is approved.
Who are the days? Record. Thank you.
And make a note that I did not realize it was harder to become a bus driver than it is a Green Beret. I didn't know that.
It seems that way.
just to be clear, even though this vote passed, are we still gonna reach out
Yes,
and do what
Yeah,
Mr. Shell was saying?
yes.
That to me was understood that we were gonna try all those things.
I mean, at the
but
end of the
it'll help
day-
a little bit, but it's not gonna solve the problem.
We will try everything
now.
for bus drivers.
Okay.
And
It says no.
at some point in time, when I think it's reasonable, we'll come back and give you how many people say they want to try to be because we can't offer the class to the summer for child nutrition, for instance, even TAs. But whatever feedback we get, you know, from the standpoint of why they want to be a bus driver, why they don't want to be a bus driver, you know, and then how many said they'd like to go to the class. We'll give you feedback on that also. Mr. Shell, you're invited, okay?
I'll give you time to think about that, but I would love to involve.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is new business. First item under that's auctioning surplus items which are no longer essential, useful, or whatever else the wording is that Mr. Bullard says we have to include in that. Okay, I hadn't gotten that.
Thank you. I recommend the board's approval. Recommend the board's approval for the auction to be held on February 24th to approve this list submitted by Kevin Lee.
Have a motion, do I hear a second? Have a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, it is approved. Any opposed? Let me say it. All right, it is approved. Next item, Minnie Evans Art Center, mandatory dance floor fee, Appendix L, Ms. Quattlebaum.
Yes, sir. This is from the Minnie Evans Arts Committee, and we are asking for the board to approve us having a $50 fee for outside dance companies coming in so that we can lay down a floor. It's for the safety of the dancers and also protects the flooring.
And this is in addition to their fee that they pay to utilize Minnie Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
How much do you project to bring in with that?
I'm not sure how many dance troupes we rent to each year, but they say that the floor chips and it could hurt the students. And so this matting is sort of like what they use for wrestling, and it protects the students' safety.
I suggest if and when they redo that floor, because we've had problems with that floor since the day it was put down. That kid that was taking a dance class or something got that big splinter or something. So, you know, whenever y'all do decide to do something about that floor, do something good for it. Don't put whatever you have now down.
If I could, the reason in an auditorium where you're having music performances as well as drama, we always put, as well as the industry puts, a soft pine. A soft pine, so that you can nail sets to the floor. And it has a maple apron around it, but the main stage is a soft pine, you know, for that purpose. And when you use that, you want to be able to lay down a dance floor that covers it and makes it safe for the other performances. That's what we're doing. You know, there's nothing wrong with the floor itself. We're just asking that a fee be applied so that when there is a dance production, that we're reimbursed for the effort that we have to go through in putting that floor down. This is not a money-making opportunity at all. We're just trying to cover, you know, the cost and the expense of our time and going out and putting that floor down.
So, in other words, the stage floor of Minnie Evans is not a dance stage.
That's correct.
And it never was.
Never was.
It'd been nice if somebody had told us that. I know you weren't responsible for it.
I had never heard that question, so I don't know.
But I remember you. I'm sure
But
you recall.
I was here,
A
and
year after Minnie Evans opened, we had to pay a settlement because a student did something and ended up with a big
and that's
splinter.
what this item is about. We want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So we don't have do we have this floor now, this new floor?
We do. We've had it since day one. It wasn't installed then, and but we want to make sure that whenever there's a dance performance, that floor is down for the safety of the performers, and the fee allows us to recoup just our time and effort in putting that down.
Once it's down, can it stay down until somebody does a stage production?
Well, it could stay down for a while, but then if there's a band performance or a musical performance, you wouldn't want to set that up on the floor, plus it affects the acoustics.
Okay.
You don't have a motion.
All right.
approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is approved. Veteran Park chiller replacement, Appendix M, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll recall that the replacement of the two chillers at Veterans Park was approved as part of the 2017-18 capital budget. This project is funded through the North Carolina Education Lottery. Bids were received on January 23rd, and we recommend award of the contract to SPC Mechanical Corporation in the amount of $610,000.
Hear a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is approved. Item D, selection of construction management at-risk firm, Appendix N. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The board approved CM at risk for these projects by resolution back in November of last year. We proceeded with a project announcement, went through a selection process per board policy in the general statutes. The superintendent and the pre-selection committee recommend the following firms. For Noble Middle School renovations, we recommend Monteith Construction Corporation. For Trask Middle School renovations, we recommend Barnhill Contracting Company. And for Wrightsville Beach Elementary School additions and renovations, we recommend Monteith Construction Corporation.
You have heard the recommendations. Do I hear a motion to adopt it?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Anderson.
Oh, wait.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Can you, Mr. Anderson, just for
Yes,
the
sir.
record, explain what construction management at risk is?
Yes, sir. The general statutes give several options for delivering school construction projects. The two that we primarily use is a design bid build that we've used on several projects, and construction management at risk. The difference is that the construction manager is selected through a qualification-based selection process, and the competitive bidding is done at the first tier subcontract level. The reason we think it's so important in these projects is, as any other projects, whenever you have something unique, something complex, such as these projects, especially working on sites that are occupied, and we think it's important, and it was proved to be very successful at Laney High School and Highgard High School.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, these Monteith and Barnhill, they've done work for us in the past, correct?
Yes, sir. They have Barnhill Contracting was the CM at risk firm for Laney Gym Media Center addition. Monteith Construction was a contractor for Highgard, and is also currently doing College Park Elementary School.
Any other questions?
I would just note that these are the last three bond projects from the 2014 bond.
Oh, okay. All right, hearing none. Who made the motion? Lisa, okay.
And Mr. Shell seconded it.
All right. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Item E, lease agreement for 3 modular classroom buildings at Roland Grice Middle School. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe at the last meeting, we had a budget amendment approved that would fund this, and we've been having some discussion about the need for temporary classroom space for our middle school renovations. Tonight, we're presenting 2 lease agreements. This is a total of 3 8-classroom modular building. One lease agreement is for two buildings to be located at Roland Grice and then relocated to Trask. And the second lease is for one 8-classroom modular building to be used at Roland Grice only. We're asking for the board's approval on these two leases tonight.
The last thing you said was what, Rolling Grice and where?
Roland Grice and Trask.
Okay, was that the third thing you,
Well, there's two agreements.
Okay.
And, but these units, the point is, we're buying units that we would locate at Roland Grice, and when renovations are complete there, we'll move those to Trask, where we're starting renovations.
okay, all right.
And what's the total cost of this?
It's 34 for one,
Let's see here.
34.
That wasn't clear to me, that's why I'm asking.
Right. I have to, I want to say it's $26,000. That's not correct. The monthly rent on each of the 8 classroom units is $5,535. We then include some transport costs, delivery, and setup. So thered be a total of 3 units. Two of the units have a 2-year term, and the other has a 1-year term. So I would have to calculate that to give you a total cost, but that's a breakdown of the expense.
So we're approving, is that 80,000 that we're approving?
Correct.
And then
For one,
down at the bottom of the,
it's,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
the one is $80,000, the other is about half of that. That is for the delivery and the lease itself. But then there's some one-time charges for setup at each site.
Mr. Sherrill, I saw something that went by, it said $519,000.
I think that's the insurance value.
Is that what that was? I
That
mean,
looks-
this,
it
you know,
looks like
I'm
it's-
sorry, this thing scans and you can't, sometimes you can read it, sometimes you can't.
Understand. I think it's it looks like $60,000 total
Insurance
for
value.
setup and takeaway, and then $5,000 a month, or 5,000 and some change a month.
So that'd be another $60,000 a year.
You saw a charge of $80,000 for one, and you saw a charge of $40,000 for the second.
Okay.
That's the upfront, then the $5,000 a month.
That's the $5,000 a month.
How much, and insurance is embedded in that cost?
120
That's
upfront for
correct.
both,
Well,
the setup
We
and then
will
5,000
provide
upfront.
insurance once they're delivering on our site.
Okay.
The $500,000 was the value of the units. They're providing that so we know how much to insure them for.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right. I think we have a motion and a second, don't we?
Okay.
No, we don't. Move for approval?
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is approved. Utility easement agreement with Cape Fear Public Utility Authority at Johnson Pre-K.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cape Fear Public Utility Authority has requested a utility easement at the Johnson Pre-K site. The easement location is outside the fenced area and is in an area that doesn't have any impact on our use of the property at this time, nor do we anticipate any future conflict. The easement is specifically for the purpose of sewer force main, and the authority has offered $1,847 in exchange for the easement. We recommend approval.
Is this before, the McCray is the one that, when you come in on McCray, behind like where the police station is, is that where?
No, sir.
I'm
No,
looking
ma'am.
at?
It's the one that's running, parallel to the front entrance. That's
Okay.
McCray Street.
Okay.
Move for approval.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
I have no directional sense. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Ms. Eastep, do you have any questions, or do you have any questions?
I I can't read maps. That's
Oh,
it.
well.
Sorry.
It's hard, it's sometimes hard to.
I just can't read them anyway, so, as everyone knows.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is approved. Next item on the agenda, correspondence. Anybody want to share any correspondence?
Yes, I do. We received a thank you note from a trustee from a small school system in Idaho. She had contacted me as chair of the policy committee, asking about some of our policies. They had a topic and our policy manual popped up for them, and so I was able to share how the policies came about and how we proceed with them. And she, we also talked about some of the things that we're doing here, and she got very excited, said a really nice thank you note, and said, though, that our policy manual was the most user-friendly she had encountered. So thanks to technology and Mrs. Adams for getting that.
Wonderful. How big school district?
It was a very small school
Yeah,
district.
where, from, where?
Idaho.
Idaho, yeah, okay.
Very cold.
Okay, yeah. Any other correspondence? All right, hearing none. Announcements. New Hanover County Board of Education will hold a special meeting on Friday, February 9th at noon in the Board of Ed Center here. Only item on the agenda is a closed session pursuant to North Carolina North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11A1 and 115C-402. Who's sitting on that hearing?
What was the question?
Who's sitting on that hearing?
Wortman and.
On the ninth?
Missy Step.
On the
and
ninth?
Missy Step.
Okay, so the three of y'all and
Mhm.
Don?
Mhm.
Okay.
Question, initially, because that thing, it's like a bunch of rabbits, it just kept growing. There's 5 now, right? Does it start at 12?
Yes.
Okay, 12 and then 5.
12 until.
12 until.
Have fun.
You're not cruising again, are you?
No, I'm not. That's not till May. New Hanover County Board of Education will hold a redistricting work session on Tuesday, February 20th, 2018 at 5:30 in this building. Public is invited to attend. However, I understand there will be no public comment.
I asked for public comment. I think that's important
Oh,
if
I
we're
do
going to do that.
too. I
because
do
Oh, I thought, I'd been told there would be none.
Typically at a work session you don't, but if you would like to, you can structure the work session
did
any way you
That was
want.
what we talked to, you know, I mean,
Well, yeah, but we
give
were-
landfall the opportunity to be heard.
I think it'd be good to have.
And we typically have
All right.
done work sessions in the back room, but if we're gonna do public comment,
Right up
we need to do it
Put
out
that
here.
on the agenda. There will be, there'll be public comment.
Now, I don't anticipate as many people as last time, but you never know.
No.
They should have the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right, they
You want
should.
that at the, public comment before we move into any of our discussion?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, well, actually, we have something now. We're gonna have a, retreat on, February the 17th, beginning at 11 o'clock and running to about 4 or whenever we get done in room 301 of the administration building on Carolina Beach
Not
Road.
gonna be at the airport?
No, Jeanette didn't want to go to the airport.
Not until I apply somewhere.
Well, I don't know why you have a problem. I never had a problem.
Well, it's still
It's what?
not a user-friendly room. Anyway, that's
We
okay.
sit there and look at each other.
Okay.
Anyway,
Look, I'll schedule a flight out of the little airport next door so you can watch planes go.
Thank you.
that's all right. I don't want to see the little chunkers. Next regular meeting of New Hanover County Board of Education will be on Tuesday, March 6, 2018 at 5:30 here in the Board of Education Center.
I have an announcement.
That's the announcements. You have one?
Yes, please. The Board of Education Student Scholarships for Future Teachers application ended today at noon. We now have 11 candidates vying for 4 years of college at $28,000 for the total scholarship. So we will have to schedule those interviews, thank you. And I want to say I don't think we realize how much time Mrs. Adams spends in getting that information out there, but also contacting, working with the principals and the counselors to, because the application process is very, very stringent, and if they're missing one thing, it doesn't qualify them to be interviewed. So she has worked tirelessly to get us these 11 students that have finished everything the way it should be, and we have great diversity in the application, male and female, that want to be future teachers.
Good. I would encourage Ms. Adams to also inform the board of anything that she thinks we could do to enhance the process or make it better, including some discussion about the interview process itself. So I would look forward to maybe discussing with her, or anybody else discussing with her about what they would want to do with the interview.
Mr. Higgins, one more thing if you could, under announcements. I've been asked to bring it to our attention, because I don't know what our absentee rate has been this week, but has any thought been given to a suggestion to me, and I'm not suggesting we do this, but the suggestion was close school for a week to stop the spread of the flu? Just throwing it out. I mean, I was asked to bring that up.
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Holliday address this, since he worked closely with the health department.
Thank you. Just very briefly, we've been in contact with our health department partners every day during this crisis, and they would let us know if we reached a community level that they would recommend to the superintendent school closure. We're not at that point. And what our health department partners are telling us is flu's everywhere, and if a child is sick or a staff member is sick, we've just emphasized they need to stay home. If we reach the threshold of 35–40% absent a day, and then we'll have a conversation. But right now, I think the worst school we've had so far has been at about 15% one day. And
District-wide, today we're sitting around 8.5%.
right, in one school. So, I mean, so we are normally at about 95–96%, and we're at about 91–92% over the past 3 days. So we've not, where there are some schools that have a lot of children absent and they're feeling it, overall it fluctuates anywhere from 8 to 10% now. So.
And the school that's affected, it'll spike at a school, and then it'll come back to normal.
Yeah, and one thing that I know you know, but I'm certain that people are asking, everybody knows that when we close the schools, it disrupts this community. I mean, it really does. I mean, if we delay 2 hours, which we have to sometimes, for the cold or for ice or whatever, or if we close those, it really disrupts the community. And apparently, we got parents that don't have any place to take the children. And I'm not saying that's not a reason not to close if we have to close. I'm just saying we need to, and I know y'all understand this, but we need to be real careful when we think about closing schools for any period of time. When a private school can close, that's that's really a different problem. I mean, especially a small school that can close and the parents can figure out what to do. But in our broad range of economic status that we have with our parents, closing our schools really impacts this community. And it not only impacts the community, it impacts people being able to go to work, and impacts how the economy of the community works. And again, I'm not saying that's not a reason for closure. We just need to consider that when we do close.
Well, the other thing to consider too is, if we closed, then that's a week. We got to figure out when to make up.
But guys, we do this in cooperation with the health department.
Yeah.
They are our partners in any decision that we make as it relates to health issues for our students. And our school nurses are health department employees, and we work very closely with them and with their agency.
Just make sure everybody's washing their hands, and
we stress that. Also, our folks are cleaning the buildings. So that's.
I mean, from my experience of being on a cruise, you can't walk 10 feet without somebody spraying some disinfectant on your hands. So keeping your hands clean, Really
And
important.
stay home if you're sick.
Huh?
And stay home if you're sick.
Yeah, yeah. All right, next item we have is a closed session. Do we need it?
I don't think we do.
I think we've already agreed on
Motion to adjourn?
that. All right, I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a second?
You're
All those
seeing
in
us when
favor
we
signify
need
by
it.
saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank y'all.